Well, good evening, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Chris Glass. I'm one of the senior vice presidents here at the Institute. And on behalf of the faculty, staff, students, and alumni, welcome to the Institute of World Politics. For those of you who are visiting us for the first time, we are a graduate school of national security, international affairs, focused on teaching all of the arts of statecraft and intelligence tradecraft. It's really wonderful to see so many good friends and colleagues here this evening. And I especially want to take this time to thank all the active duty, reserve, and veteran students, and our distinguished senior fellows from the Republic of Poland for being here this evening as well. Thank you all for being here. Well, it is my great honor and privilege to introduce our guest speaker this evening. Dr. Nguyen is the founder of Pragmatics Incorporated. He kicked this company off from the ground floor and has built it brick by brick to its current success. It is an information technology firm based in Reston, Virginia, and he provides overall strategic guidance and direction to senior management in operations, business development, and finance. Pragmatics was established in 1985 and delivers innovative solutions to clients in numerous defense and civilian agencies, including the Department of the Army, Navy, Air Force, Homeland Security, State, Commerce, Treasury, Transportation, Labor, and Navy. And over the years, Pragmatics has performed on more than 1,000 projects for more than 100 different customers. Prior to Pragmatics, Dr. Long, and as he's affectionately addressed by those of us who have had the privilege to work for him, had a distinguished academic career in which he taught computer science at Georgetown University, Indiana University, and Purdue University. A man of compassion, kindness, and generosity, Dr. Long, along with his wife, Kimmy, have established multiple relief funds for numerous disasters, including the 9/11 victims, earthquake in Nepal, typhoon in the Philippines, tornadoes and storms in Oklahoma, an earthquake and tsunami in Japan, Hurricane Sandy, an earthquake in Haiti, and Hurricane Katrina. And even now, they are both currently raising funds for the most recent hurricanes that have ravaged Texas, Florida, and recently Puerto Rico. They have strongly supported our nation's wounded veterans and their families, which is extremely important to them, and have made numerous donations over many years to benefit and support our armed forces and veterans. Now, this next section is something that you would never hear them talk about themselves, or even personally dialogue with you on. So it again is my privilege to read this part, especially publicly. Dr. Long contributed substantially to the Smithsonian Vietnamese American Heritage Endowment. He also served as a member of the Transition Committee for Virginia's Governor-elect Tim Kaine in 2005. He has created endowments at both George Mason University and Iowa State University in honor of his past academic advisors. In 2007, he established an endowed chair in software engineering at Iowa State University in honor of his parents. In 2009, both he and Kimmy donated substantially to the School of Engineering and Information Technology at George Mason University, which names the new engineering building after them, and most recently, they established substantial scholarships at the University of Maryland. Dr. Long earned his undergraduate degree in physics at North Carolina State University his master's degree also in physics from the University of Virginia, and his doctorate in computer science at Iowa State University. And now on a personal note, which this is something I've been wanting to do publicly for a very long time. And now I've got the mic. I've had the privilege to work for Dr. Long and Kimmy. They have modeled what it means to work hard, overcome challenges, maintain business acumen and integrity, which is extremely important in these days and especially important to me, provide focused leadership, and succeed, all the while demonstrating genuine humility and care for others. My family, my children have been blessed by their goodness and their example. They are truly the all-American couple, and they share a remarkable story, if you ever get the chance to hear it, of all that our nation can offer those who work hard and serve others. Scripture teaches us God opposes the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. Please welcome with me a man of great grace, Dr. Long Nguyen.
Thank you, Chris, for a very, very kind introduction. We try our best, but if my mother was alive today and hears what Chris just said, she would ask, Long who? I want to thank the Institute of Work Politics and Chris class for having me here today. It is a great privilege and great honor for me to be here today. And thank you all for coming today. I want to address a very important issue nowadays, which affects America's security, America's future, and also my own country, Vietnam's future, Vietnam's security too. So the topic of my talk is China as a threat of the world. And within that, I will talk about the Chinese invasion of Southeast Asia. I will be talking about 5 different topics. Threat to USA and Europe, threat to South Asia, to Africa, to Latin America. And at the beginning, at the end, I will have the conclusion. If you look at the situation now in the US, in Europe, China is destroying our manufacturing bases. Practically many bases of our manufacturing capabilities have moved to China. We lost a lot of jobs, and we will have a hard time recovering from them. China is also flooding the world markets with illegal, subsidized, and toxic products. For example, a few years ago, there was a story about the drywall manufacturer in China, here in the US. They contain toxic products, which cause people in those houses who use drywalls from China, cause them to have pneumonia, respiratory problems, sore throat, and the drywall from China also causes problems with the AC system, the heater system in the US. Even now, every year, there are 100,000 homes in the US which suffer that, which cause a lot of problems, a lot of health problems for our people, and a lot of problems just to repair them. That's just one example. Another example is that China has found a way to dry their products much faster. They dry their products, put the gas exhaust gas from trucks. The problem is that the exhaust gas from trucks contains lead and carbon dioxide, which are poisonous to our health, and they export those fast drying products to all over the world. And that is just two examples. There are thousands and thousands of problems like that all over the world. Conducting trade war. They are stealing intellectual properties and cheating on an enormous scale. That is so obvious to us. And for example, intellectual property. An example is Google. Years ago, China forced Google to move some of their operation to China. And as a result, the Chinese businesses, in collusion with the Chinese government, hacked into Google system. They stole codes, secrets. And the net result of that is nowadays, the Chinese equivalent to Google has 65% of the market in China. 65%. Okay, and they got that through theft of IPs from Google. That is just one of many examples again. Of course, they pollute our environment with toxic and other dangerous products. There are tons of evidence. You can go on Google, Facebook, Wikipedia, and the media, and they all have tons of examples about that. Illegal currency manipulation too. They undervalue their currency yuan purposely in order to have cheap products, okay, exporting to other countries, to all over the world. Again, they counterfeit and pirate the IP and commercial products. And as a result of that, as a result of all of these unfair, illegal practices, we owe them more than $3 trillion. More than $3 trillion. And it keeps increasing. And they conduct aggressive economic, military, political espionage against the US and Europe. If you read the book by Ptvh, Death by China, this is just a few of the examples in the book. Death by China has many more examples of what China is doing to us in this country and Europe. And the quote that I have here, China is the only nation in the world preparing to kill America. That is a quote from Ptvh. The book, Death by China, has been made into an award-winning documentary film. Together with the book Death by China, you should look into the documentary Crouching Tiger, which exposed various insidious plans and action of China preparing to destroy us. We want to make the American people and the American government to be aware of the serious situation with China. Russia is not our number one enemy anymore. China is. We have pretty much boxed in Russia. There's nothing much that Putin can do. But there's a lot that China has been doing, is doing, and will be doing against us. Now, the threat to Southeast Asia. In March of this year, I went back to my old country, Vietnam, That trip was an eye-opener for me. Before the trip, I had hoped that the Vietnamese communist leaders would imitate the generals from Myanmar, from Burma. You remember many years ago, those generals who formed the government of Myanmar was very much pro-Chinese. But after a few years of dealing with them, they saw through their scheme to conquer, dominate Burma. So they have changed the government, and now the Myanmar government is pretty much pro-Western, pro-American. For Vietnam, it's too late. In 1990, the Chinese communist leaders convoked the Vietnamese communist leaders to the Chinese city called Chengdu. In that city, both communist nations signed a treaty, an agreement called the Chengdu Agreement. What that agreement effectively does is to annex Vietnam gradually over the years with a table. Eventually, Vietnam will be just a small province of China, with a governor from China, from Communist China, just like 2,000 years ago. Effectively, the Vietnamese Communist Party has sold Vietnam to Communist China, and Communist China will annex Vietnam without firing a shot. Shame on the Vietnamese Communist Party. In our illustrious history, in the Vietnamese history, our people were never cowardly. When I went back to Vietnam in March, I talked to a lot of taxi drivers, restaurant staff, hotel staff, friends, relatives. Sometimes I talk to people on the street. All of the people I talked to, and I talked to many of them, I was there for 3 weeks. All of them were very upset with the Vietnamese Communist Party. But they feel they move by themselves, they cannot do anything. I visited 4 cities in all: Saigon, Nha Trang, Da Nang, Hue. Compared to my previous trip, this time I see a lot of Chinese. Everywhere I went to, I see a lot of Chinese. They were very obnoxious. They act as if they have owned Vietnam already. And this is in the Vietnamese territory. The people realized that they were very upset. The Vietnamese Communist Party has no credibility with the Vietnamese people anymore. They have lots of people. Their days are numbered. The current situation is that Laos is practically a vassal of China, Red China. Red China occupies most of Cambodia. Next is Vietnam, and then Thailand. I cannot stand still and watch Communist China take over my own country. That is why when I came back here in my March trip, I formed a movement called Việt Hùng, which says that glorify Vietnam again. I formed this movement to support the people in Vietnam, who I'm sure will have a struggle against the Chinese domination, the communist Chinese domination. This struggle will be long, will be multidimensional, will be long because China is very powerful nowadays, and they have insidious plans to conquer not only South Asia but the whole world. It is long, it is multi-generational. I will train the next 2 generations of Vietnamese Americans or Vietnamese overseas to continue my work after I'm gone. I know it will take much longer. I will take 25 years, 50 years, but I'm very confident, I'm very sure that by the end, we will be very victorious. We have done that more than 10 times. If you look at Vietnamese history, we do have a fair share of excellent generals. We do have a fair share of war fighters, excellent war fighters too. We have repulsed the invaders from the north more than 10 times in the past. We even defeated the Mongols 3 times. 3 times when the Mongols were invincible. They never lost a war until they came to Vietnam 3 times. And the third, we had a good king and good general there. Both of them are very famous in our history. And the third time they came, the king turned to the general and they asked, "What do you think will happen?" And that famous general said, "This time it will be very easy." And the king asked, "How so?" And the general said that because unlike the first time, our people are not afraid anymore. They have defeated the Mongols twice. They are better trained. They have more discipline. They have confidence. And the third time was really easy. Okay. So, we need your help. We need America's help. Many of you are probably watching the film Vietnam War by Ken Burns on TV. You will see that is a history of the Vietnam War from Ken Burns' perspective. Many people say that we Americans were on the wrong side. We were not on the wrong side. We were on the American side. It's just that we brought up a government, a South Vietnamese government, which did not have enough time, which was not effective in defeating the Vietnamese communists. This time is different. The Vietnamese communists don't have the people anymore. As I mentioned, there is a number. This is our chance, the American chance, the Vietnamese chance to win the Second Vietnam War. And I have no doubt that we will win. It requires the sacrifices of tens of millions of Vietnamese in Vietnam and overseas. And our movement, the movement Việt Hưng, main goal is to support the people in Vietnam to struggle against the Chinese invaders, the communist Chinese invaders. We need your help. If you can help us, and if America can help the Vietnamese people, not only America will win the Second Vietnam War, but also America will show that it upholds the high values of America, the values of human rights, human dignity, freedoms, freedom from oppression, freedom from being invaded. All of those are the values that America stands for. And with that, if you support the struggle in Vietnam, the world will respect America much more, and America will remain to be the #1 power in the world. So we need your help. Please help us. These maps show the place where the Chinese have started the invasion of Vietnam. You see there's tons of places. At many of those places, the Chinese are inside. They use Chinese currency. They have Chinese signs. They spoke Chinese, and they have what they call armed guards to prevent the Vietnamese from entering on Vietnamese soil. Many places, whole towns, whole districts, most of the provinces. So they have already invaded Vietnam with the collusion of the Vietnamese Communist Party. That is why the people are very upset with the Vietnamese Communist Party. As I mentioned, the Vietnamese Communist Party days are numbered. If they don't have the people, they have lost everything. The Vietnamese Communist Party may have some land in Vietnam. The Chinese Communist government may have some land in Vietnam. But we, the Vietnamese people, okay, we struggle and kick them out. Eventually, like I said, more than 10 times in the past. So this is just a reflection of what is going on in Vietnam. Next is the threat to Asia. As we already know, China has already annexed Tibet and the Muslim countries of Western China. Their latest scheme is one belt, one road. I will have a picture of that later on. But that scheme is to enhance and solidify the economic, military, and political power of China. For years now, China does not hide the fact that their goal is world domination. If you remember in 1949, when Mao Zedong came to power, they used the name as People's Republic of China at that time. And for years, we hear about People's Republic of China. In the last several years, you don't hear that anymore. They use an old name called Middle Kingdom. You hear that more and more often from Communist China. Middle Kingdom means that they are the center. They are the center of the universe. Everything revolves around them. That is the intention. So for one belt, one road, or overall, they plan to spend $124 billion, and they have started on that already. For example, they are building a rail road from Beijing to Bangkok. They are building a high-speed train also from China to Thailand, in addition to that. And then the railroad will go on to Singapore. And they have their budget enough to bribe the corrupt leaders in Asia, in Africa, and in Latin America. And of course, you have heard about the new islands in South China Sea. Okay, I will have a picture of that soon. This picture was produced by Communist China. Effectively, you see that they claim all of the South China Sea, no matter what. The Philippines took them to the World Court. They lost. And they say, we don't recognize the World Court. Okay? And that is it. And you see that they even occupy some of the the beaches in Vietnam. When I was in Vietnam in March, by chance, one day, the front page of the largest newspaper there said that on the beach of Vietnam, there are about 40 boats which dredge the sand. In 2 months, those boats dredged 4 million cubic meters of sand. For what? To build up the islands that I will show you soon. They do things like that. They occupy people and then use everything. So, China's intention is to occupy Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, all the countries around the South China Sea. Malaysia, Indonesia, the Philippines. When they control all those countries, they effectively control the South China Sea. And the South China Sea is very important to America. We will not let them have free reign in the South China Sea. Okay, and that is just one part of the world. So, I have a few pictures of the islands that Communist China is building up in the South China Sea. This is a picture of before and after. On the left, you see the island in 2011. On the right, you see the same island expanded in 2015 through the same from Vietnam too. This is another one. Okay, before and after. On the left, there's not much at all. And then on the right, there's an island. Military installation. And another island. And they build up, and you can see that they have military installation. Again, another South China Sea island build up with boats and so on. This one I like it the best. It shows an airstrip. Okay. They intend to make those South China Sea island a military base. And they do have aircraft carrier, okay, who will go to those islands and use those islands as military bases to control the South China Sea. And there's no secret about that. Okay, and they are doing that not only in in Asia, but many other places in the world. This is the boat, the small boat in the middle is the Communist Vietnam boat, and the two other boats are Communist China boats. In Vietnam nowadays, okay, if you protest against the Vietnamese Communist government, you are put in jail. If you protest against Communist China, you are also put in jail. And this boat illustrates the fight of some Vietnamese against China some time ago. Our fishermen, the Vietnamese fishermen, they went along the coast of Vietnam to fish to make their livelihood. Communist Chinese fishing boat, much bigger and armed too. The Vietnamese fishing boat would never arm, but the Communist Chinese boats were fishermen were armed. So they bully, they threaten our boats. And when this Vietnamese government sent their small navy against the Chinese communist boats, then Communist China claimed that we are attacking the innocent fishermen, and they would send these boats to bully us. They do things very blatantly. This is all war of one belt, one road. This is one of the Communist China schemes. It covers 65 countries and 40% of the world GDP. Part of that, they use the old Silk Road. You remember the Silk Road for trading between China and Europe. And you cannot see. On top of that, you will see the legend below here. On top of that, okay, it goes all the way to China, to Spain. And then they have a maritime road which goes all the way from China down here, and to form one belt, one road. That is the latest scheme. Today they make an announcement. Okay, they are not going to use the Nine Dutchies anymore to control the South China Sea and within that road. They just combine that, they use another name, which means the same thing. This is very important for China. We need to defeat them on this. We need to align with the countries on the bank, on the road. So some protest pictures against China, we see this from all over the world. This one is probably from Turkey, or maybe the Philippines. Yeah. This is the protest against China and their President Xi Jinping right there. Yeah. If you are concerned about Putin, this guy is much more dangerous. Okay. Putin, we cannot do much nowadays. We have pretty much boxing in, but this guy is turning evil, and he's dangerous. Same thing. Protest against him, against China. This is the Philippines. This is the disdain for China. Again, this is probably in Turkey. Next is a threat to Africa. Okay. Again, there are private corrupt leaders in Africa, and there are many corrupt leaders. And they are buying business land and land in Africa. And again, just like in Asia, they have long-term leases, 50 years, 99 years, to send the Chinese people there to occupy the land. Sometimes a town, sometimes the whole district, sometimes part of the province. And they have, through corrupt leaders, which don't pay right, they have exclusive rights to export natural resources, oil, gas, and mineral rights, precious mineral rights. And they are doing that in Africa. The next slide will show you the influence in Africa. If we look at this carefully, you see where the countries with dark blue, where more than 80% of the people think positively of China. And this is serious for Africa. more than 80%. Okay. They are making inroads into Africa, many African countries. No, they are still white countries where they don't have a presence yet. I was told a story about Somalia. Early on, many years ago, when the Chinese came into Somalia, the Somalian people seek the Chinese out and kill them. Right. So that there are not many Chinese in Somalia. So to me, the Somalian, like the Irish people, like the Vietnamese people, and many other people in the world, all those people will never accept foreign domination. This is a picture of Chinese teaching Chinese to African people. 2,000 years ago, when China occupied Vietnam for 1,000 years, except for a few short years, they also forced the Vietnamese people at that time to study Chinese, write Chinese, read Chinese, write Chinese, do Chinese. If the Vietnamese people spoke Vietnamese, they are punished. They are doing the same thing in Africa. They would have the school to teach Chinese language in Africa, if not already. Chinese workers in Africa, right to Latin America, they are doing the same thing like they are doing in other continents. When I went to Latin America a few years ago, I see Chinese everywhere. They have a strong presence there. And you don't see a lot of Chinese cars in here. With Chinese cars, people, because they're cheap, people in Latin America have bought them. But they don't have the regulations like we do in this country. Right? They don't recall cars like we do. Okay, so many of these cars are unsafe. And the corrupt government just let things go by. And of course, they have toxic products in Latin America too. We have a history of Panama children. One time, there were 370 children from Panama dead because of toxic cough syrup made in China. The cough syrup made in China contains diethylene glycol, which causes death at one time to 375 children of Panama. This is an example where they destroy the environment in Latin America. So, in conclusion, I need your help to make Americans become aware of the Chinese threat. It's serious, it's here, it would affect our future considerably. I also need you to make the government be aware of that threat too, and to take it seriously. As I mentioned, China is our #1 enemy. Not Russia anymore, China. We need an effective strategy to contain China. I don't know whether many of you have heard about George Kennan. Okay, for those of you who don't know about him, George Kennan was an American diplomat around 1920. He worked for our State Department, and he was in the Soviet Union many years. And during that time, he wrote a very long memo back to the State Department. In that, he developed a whole strategy on how to contain the Soviet Union and our government. Both Republican administration and Democratic administration follow his blueprint to the letter. Without the risk of nuclear war in the 40s, 50s, 60s, so on. And after 70 years, we won the Cold War, thanks to George Kennan. I hope that somewhere in our government now, there is another George Kennan to contain China, and I'm sure there will be. We should align with the nation on the one band, one road against Chinese world domination plot. We want to make Americans aware of the danger from China. To me, I don't see that happening a lot. So I need you to talk to your friends, relatives, families, and so on to emphasize the danger of China. I saw one on TV that an American, a very good American, who watched something from Best Buy, and the television crew asked that person why he bought that, and the answer was that because it's cheap. And then he was asked whether he knew who made that. He didn't know. And the camera zoomed in a label on the product, made in China. Okay, we are helping China destroy our manufacturing base with that. We should buy American and boycott Chinese product. Myself, personally, my family and myself owe everything to this country. And things that we can do, we buy American. The cars, and I have been in this country for 40 years, all the cars that I buy, they are American made. We try to even buy very few Chinese food. Now, in my mind, China has three major drawbacks that many people don't know, especially the first two. It has a repressive regime, not like us. And the second is not so obvious to many people, is that both the people of China and the communist leadership of China, they have a feudal mentality. If China doesn't have those two drawbacks, I would be very, very, very worried about their intention and their goals. But I think these two drawbacks would limit them and cause their downfall, would allow us to contain them. These are two very, very key factors. And of course, China represents everything against our value, our human rights value, our human dignity value, our freedom, the freedom to choose our own destiny, to govern ourselves, to be free from repressive regime, from dictatorship. And these are the values that we hold highly, and we always abide by them. Once again, I want to thank you for coming here and being patient, listening to me. I hope that I have conveyed the message, and I hope you will convey that message to your friends, your relatives, your co-workers, your colleagues, etc. to make sure that most Americans become aware of the Chinese threat and our administration too. Thank you for having me here tonight.
We'd like to take a few minutes as well. If you would have any questions at all for Dr. Nguyen, I would just ask that you say it loud and clear and try to keep your, oh, we got a mic, fantastic. That'll make it easy. And if you could just make your questions succinct so that we can get as many questions in as we can in the limited time that we may have. And I'll let you come on here.
Just go me long is okay.
Yes.
I don't go for doctor.
Yeah, I too have served China for quite a while, and I've been to Vietnam many years ago, 20 years ago. So I have a sense of Asia and where things may be going. You made many comments, and I'm only going to speak on one of them. In boycotting Chinese products, could you begin to imagine how inflationary that would be? So I think, although it sounds good as kind of a rally cry, I think economically speaking, because so much material that we use in our daily lives in our country, in Europe, throughout Latin America, as you rightly said, if we were to boycott this, where would it come from? If it's domestic sources, then to ramp up and create this, it would be incredibly inflationary, and that's something that people don't like.
You have a very good point. Everybody has raised the same point like that. Okay, because the products are very cheap. But note also that they are very toxic. Note also that if we buy more Chinese products, okay, we are encouraging them, helping them in the world domination. Okay, and by that time it's too late to boycott. So what we should do is to encourage other people to boycott their products and to buy as few Chinese products as possible and gradually decrease that make buying. All our survival is Aztec. Okay. Yes.
For this entire seminar, it was very informative. And I actually have a question about this last segment here in your conclusions. So you said that China has 3 major drawbacks, and the one that interested me the most, because this is kind of an area of study of mine as well, been really focusing on the South China Sea quite a bit lately, especially with Scarborough Shoal and Spratly Island dispute. But when you say that that China has a feudal mentality as far as the people, how would, I guess I'm looking at is how would the United States exploit that via like active measures with China in order to hopefully change the population mentality from being feudal?
We don't want to change the mentality. We want them to keep that. We encourage them to do that. That is a major limitation for them. If they don't have that, and if they have the rule of the law like we do now, okay, I would be very much afraid of China. Even now, I'm afraid of them. But if they don't have those two, I would be scared to death of them. Because they have those two, I am confident that we will be able to contain them. So we don't want to discourage them from eliminating that kind of mentality. Yes, please.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed that. I have read that the up-and-coming generations don't like the government and they don't pay much attention to it. As a result, they don't get jobs. Do you think that there'll be enough of that type of growth that will affect the government itself?
This is the Chinese government or Vietnamese government or the American government?
The Chinese government primarily, but I throw in the Vietnamese too, because you say they're almost together now.
You know, there are these centers in China. It is a repressive regime, okay? And the way they treat these centers are horrible. Okay, look for example Falun Gong. Okay, they keep them alive. They using organs to sell. Okay, they don't have any reservation in killing and getting the life organ from the Falun Gong people, and really for survival. We want to encourage them in doing that, because sooner or later the people would not be very happy with them. It's a repressive regime. Yes.
What role does Taiwan play, or should they play, in this in relation of the United States and other countries with China itself?
You know, years ago, China advocated peace. They didn't want to go to war with the U.S. And years ago, they say the one reason they would go to war with the U.S. is Taiwan. Right? They know that going to war would slow the economy, they go out, they go to war domination. So Taiwan now, I think, has followed in the background. If you look at the history of China from 1949, when Mao Zedong came to power, okay, they had a period where they want to grow the economy and become respectable and feed their own people. Then next came the era of Chen Xiaoping. Okay, you remember Chen Xiaoping in the 70s and so later. His goal, and they have achieved that way, is to grow China economically, okay, to trade, to subterfuge through all the various things that we have seen. And they have done that effectively. That is the second of the three main guys in China. And now comes Xi Jinping. His goal is that he's of power now. He is the second strongest economy in the world. His next goal is world domination. Those are the three main people after 1949. And Taiwan is not playing a very key role in that. Okay. Yes.
Thank you for your lecture. More and more people in Japan have come to recognize the threat of China these days. And my question is about one of the best sellers about China in Japan is a 100-year strategy of Japan. It's the translation of Ptvh's book. And in terms of Chinese very long-term strategy, and according to him, China is seeking global hegemony, so over the United States in the future. Do you have any specific opinion about Chinese long strategy and what they would do next, and what they we could do next? Thank you.
They will not spare Japan. Okay, Japan is in the rest to ally with the U.S. It is in the U.S. in the rest to ally with Japan. Together, we will work into containing communist China. And it's good that we have a strong ally in Japan. Okay, does that answer your question?
Yes, over the past several years, there have been fewer and fewer countries that have diplomatic relations with Taiwan as opposed to Beijing, but some of them I think are pretty good diplomatic allies, like I think Paraguay, for example. And I know you're talking about ally with nations along the One Belt, One Road, but what about nations with diplomatic alliances with Taiwan? Wouldn't that be helpful if, I think Panama just recently went to Beijing, relates to Beijing, and they control both ends of the Panama Canal, and they're also trying to build a canal in Nicaragua too, which is, Nicaragua had been the Taiwan ally. And Sao Tome and Principe, I think, over the past several years has switched to China, but isn't it in our interest to reverse that? I know we believe we're supposed to support a one China policy, but anybody in Taiwan who wants organ harvesting or have the fertility totally controlled through a one child or two child policy would have to be crazy.
we want to have as many allies as possible in the world. This fight is a big fight. It's a time-consuming fight struggle. So even if Panama or some Latin American countries, even if Communist China has been able to bribe the leaders there, we still should win those countries over. Okay, as many allies as possible. That is why we need a long-term strategy, not just some tactical moves. Long-term strategy similar to George Kennan's strategy about 100 years ago. And I'm sure that we will be able to contain China too because of the three major drawbacks there.
What would be your, in the long run, what would be your ideal scenario or ideal picture of the world with these two major power relations if the containment strategy works?
I would like to see the world with free and independent nation, not under the domination of any foreign countries, especially China, Communist China. That is the ideal world that I see, especially for small countries like Vietnam, who have a long history of expulsing the northern invaders. And I would like to see that not only in Asia, but Africa, and Latin America too. And even, I didn't mention about Australia and New Zealand purposely, because China has not been able to bribe the leaders of countries. Nevertheless, they're still trying. When I went to Australia and New Zealand a few years ago, I see Chinese everywhere. Okay, they buy shops, businesses, lands there too, but it's not in the immediate goal. The immediate goal is going to serve more Asia, Africa, Europe, America, and Latin America. Yes.
I have a question because I am a student of international trade and economic. I'm thinking, have you, just regardless of those facts that you listed, maybe your interpretation is very different from what the world people sees it. But just to speak economically, you would like to boycott Chinese products, and you will call Chinese currency manipulator. But it is really hard to define either country it's a currency manipulator, because it is really, if they intend to do that, and the environment is very complex, and they wouldn't be able to do that with the very effective instruments. And also the boycott Chinese products, have you done a cost-benefit analysis before come up with this suggest of all those containment for China?
Well, as I mentioned, I hope that there's a new George Kennan in the US who would have a more encompassing strategy. The boycott China is just one of my suggestions. That I know it's hard to do, but if we boycott as much as possible, okay, that will slow down the ambition of Communist China. I know that we cannot completely do that, but people now are buying Chinese goods everywhere, every country. That's too much.
China is producing lots of goods and costs lots of things. I think the price is huge. China is polluting its own country for the world. But that's just one point. And I'm just, I'm sorry, it's a little bit too much for me to hear.
It is a multi-dimensional struggle.
Yeah, but I think even though I think in the future there might be a trade war or cyber war between both of the countries. Yeah, but I think like in order to keep the country's main interest in mind, there might be other more effective diplomacy that you could employ to this situation instead of just suggest maybe it's a backtrack. Maybe it could take us back to the Cold War period. Like now it's just between China and the U.S.
Yeah, it is a multi-dimensional structural fight. We cannot rely on diplomacy alone. China will not rely on diplomacy. They will rely on many ways, subterfuges, plot schemes, and many other ways. We need to be able to deal with them in those aspects too. Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Long. I'm Nguyen with Voice of Vietnamese Americans, and I would like to bring up a point that you mentioned the Chinese Communist Party. And actually the Chinese Communist Party, Russian other Communist Party have a different set of values, and the leaders are actually in the minority comparing to the population of the country. China has 1.3 billion people, but the leadership of the communist members may be just a minority, maybe 300 million at the most. So I would urge our young Chinese Americans or Chinese who are here, who have absorbed all the good values of the free world, to step up and change China. Because we're not fighting between people, we're fighting between wrong values. And talking about trade, China has actually manipulated the world trade for the last decade at least. They have manipulated currency, they have stolen many IPRs from the US, they have done many bad things to the US industry. They've taken over the US steel industry. And now look at what value does the steel has in China. No value. And it has destroyed its own environment, its own people, it harvests its own people's organs. It destroys its own people values. So you're lucky to be here with us. We're asking you to be our allies, to promote better values. Now let's talk about what you say. We can boycott things that are not good for human being. We can boycott milk that has melanin that kills Chinese babies. We can boycott tribals that's not good for people. There are many things that China put out that's not good for human. We better look at our values that put humanity first. And that value is built into our current world order under the United Nations. China is attempting to change that world order, and that's very dangerous for the whole world, including 1.3 billion of Chinese who has benefited from that. So I'm coming back to Dr. Long, that would you make a clear distinction between the humanity values of the world that we happy with? You said you imagine a free world with good values, and the Chinese Communist Party with their own mentations, just trying to take over the world and suppress humanity. So I think that if you're asking for that, we have allies in the whole world. Okay. And we can even change China.
I take that not a question but a statement support. And I thank you.
I am asking you to clarify. You kept saying China. Would you clarify that you're talking about the Chinese Communist Party with values against humanity?
We are against the Chinese Communist government. We are not against the Chinese people. Not in China, not overseas. It's a regime, a repressive regime, an abuse regime who try to dominate the world that we are against.
We have time, Dr. Long, for...
I'm a Vietnamese. First of all, whatever you said recently in this room. A lot of Vietnamese know about that. But we don't have the high power like you to send correctly link to American people like today. We should thank you. Okay.
We thank you for your support.
But the question is, everyone knows that if American government tie our hand, China will be in big trouble right away. Why? Why American government from President Clinton, President Obama, and now President Trump still, it looks like they don't want to do it. Why?
We on the outside, we really don't know what is going on within the government. And I have a high degree of confidence in our institutions, in our leaders, and I am very confident that they will come up with the right strategies to contain China. We just, from the outside, we don't know anything. We probably know maybe 1%. Okay, and thank you for your support. We have one question.
Tell you what, I'll do two. Go ahead and ask it, and then we'll do the one in the back.
Okay, so I'm from the University of New Hampshire. I'm actually at the Advocacy Center interning right now. I'm in the Pan-Asia region, and I'm just starting to inform myself on this topic. I'm looking at the Made in China Project 2025. I don't know if you were informed on it. They're trying to take over the 10 top industrial areas. How do you anticipate that's going to happen by 2025, or do you see it failing? I don't know if you have any research on that, or.
Of course, we want me to fail.
I just didn't know if you had any knowledge on if it was going to work, or.
But they have many facets. They do a lot of things, and we have to get together with all the nations in the world to counter their insidious schemes. And it's a long struggle. That is why, even for the case of Vietnam, I can see we last 25 years, 50 years, and more. And I will not be able to live to see the victory. But I'm confident we will be victorious, like we have been more than 10 times. Okay. In the back.
Thank you for the great seminar here. I'm a student from South Korea. I'm currently interning for CSIS. And just to add a little bit to what you have said, what China is doing in the recent years, they have been boycotting products from Taiwan and Japan. And they're currently doing another state-level boycott on Korean products right now. In saying that, what are your views on the possibility of change within China? What do you think is the discontent level, the people of China, for the government of China, and the level of control the Chinese government has on its people?
When I hope that the Chinese people will rally and will demonstrate protest against the Chinese communist government, and then deter them from wanting to dominate the world. And then they should take care of their own people too, instead of going around the world trying to conquer the whole world. Their people are being repressed too, and there's human abuse in China. They put many dissenters in jail, okay, and they don't have the same values as we do.
Dr. Long, and ladies and gentlemen, the bad news is I do have to cut the questions off. I know that there are many more out there, but the good news is we're going to have a reception in just a minute that everyone is invited to in the back room. Be food and drink served. But before we adjourn, Dr. Long, on behalf of the Institute of World Politics, I want to thank you very much for your insightful, poignant, and really prophetic words for the future of our relations between not only the United States and China, but those of China and Vietnam. And please know that we at the Institute of World Politics share that vision of the threat that communism poses to the free world. And we teach a value-based education that espouses that Western moral tradition. And you have a home here anytime as this vision continues to develop, and anytime that you feel that you'd like to share additional wisdom with us. And we have a couple of parting gifts. First and foremost, this is a delight for me as well. Kimmy, I want to thank you very much for all that you allow your husband to do, but also the way that you support him.